We got Jacqui, Heinrich of Fox News, baby. The Wonder Woman, questioning Karine Jean-Pierre here on quite honestly a variety of topics, but the most important one, why is the president not using executive action? Like, is that just off the table now? And why is he not doing it? Watch her spin this one. Let's roll it.
Thank you, Karine. The president said yesterday that he was hoping executive action on the border would happen by itself, that Congress would legislate it. Can you just confirm for us that this indicates that he's no longer considering executive action on the border?
Well, the president has been very clear, and I've been very clear. Anytime I've asked about executive actions here, the bottom line is, in order to have change, extensive change, real change, comprehensive change, that Senate bill that was negotiated between Republicans and obviously Democrats in the Senate would have been the best way to go. It would have been the toughest, fairest piece of legislation, law, if you will, if it had been moved and the president was able to sign it into law. And that's what's important. The president is trying to make it very clear: no executive action would have that effect, the effect that this bipartisan negotiation would have had. And he's going to be optimistic. He wants to see it moved. And let's not forget the reason why it was stopped, the reason that it didn't go forward, is because Republicans were told in Congress to reject it by the former president. That's what happened. They chose politics instead of a majority of the American people. I do want to lay out here a couple of things. It would have meant more resources to secure the border, Border Patrol agents, immigration judges, asylum officers, and law enforcement personnel to combat fentanyl. That's what would have been. That is what's in that bipartisan negotiation, and so much more. And they rejected it. Republicans rejected it because of politics. But the president stands behind the majority of Americans who want to see change happen at the border, who wants to see our immigration system that's been broken for decades fixed.
Jacqui's going to continue to press her on this. Just a few points here, because she's totally manipulating everybody. Just the American public, both Democrat and Republican, on everything she just said. Nothing that she just stated there actually solves the border crisis. Like, nothing whatsoever. Does it help a little bit? Absolutely, which is why the Border Patrol Union tends to be in favor of it, because they'll take anything from this administration, because the administration has given them nothing but grief and hardship for the last 3 years. Furthermore, she's going to sit there and say, oh, well, there's just political pods, it's just Republicans playing politics, all these other things that she always does, blames us for it. Mind you, folks, they had all three branches of government for like 2 years, did nothing about it. Nothing about it. And also, the question was, is he going to use executive action? And it's astonishing that she's going to bring up the fact of, well, we should institute this in laws and Congress should do this. Well, if executive actions didn't work out so well, why do you use so many of them? They're using executive action on student loan debt. So if it's so important to pass laws through, like that's the most best important way to do it, then why didn't you do it in terms of student loan debt forgiveness? Well, we all know why, because the Supreme Court struck it down and decided to put executive actions through anyways. So this is just all baloney. It's all lies.
I understand his preference to legislate, but the reason I'm asking is we've had conflicting answers over the span of a few weeks on whether
we've had conflicting
from the
answers.
president
No,
on
we
whether
haven't.
executive action was something he could
We
do.
haven't.
He first said that he had done everything he could with the stroke of a pen. Then he said that there was more he could do, but that you would prefer that Congress legislate this, and things were under consideration potentially for executive orders that would make changes to the border who could come across. And then yesterday, it seemed like he said no, nothing's
so
coming.
I disagree. I think there are a couple of parts here. You're asking me if there's executive actions that we can take, and what we're saying is there are no executive actions that would have done the work or would have actually been able to deal with the issue that's happening at the border and starting to really fix the immigration system than the bipartisan bill that came out of the Senate, negotiation that came out of the Senate. And we are saying that that's the best way to go. We are always looking at options. We have said this. We're always looking at options, executive actions, right, to see how to move forward. But we believe, fundamentally we believe, and it is proven by what is in that negotiation, that the way to move forward is to actually move forward with what could have been the toughest, fairest law that we've had in some time. So we're continuing to call for that. We always say,
So executive action
we
orders
always-
aren't off the table?
we always say that.
I understand what you're saying about the bill. I do. But yes or no?
But you're
is-
not. What I'm saying to you is that we always look at all our options. That's what I'm saying to you. But we are saying also is the only way to move forward to actually deal with this issue, the challenges that we're seeing that Republicans rejected because of the last president, because of Donald Trump, is that negotiation bill, that bipartisan negotiation bill. That is the way to move forward here. Are we always looking at options? Yes, but we haven't made a decision on that. That's the bottom line. We have not made a decision on that. But we want to see this bipartisan Senate negotiation proposal move forward that Republicans are rejecting because of Donald Trump. They are putting politics ahead of what works for the American people, what the American people actually want to see.
Folks, it's the fairest and toughest piece of legislation that's ever existed on the border. Does it seem fair that other countries are getting like $60 billion and we're getting a fraction of that for the border? Hey, you heard me correctly. Yes. Is it fair that other countries like Ukraine, Israel, the Gaza Strip, all that stuff, Palestinians, Iran, getting a total of like $60 billion and the border's getting like 15 to 20? Does that seem fair to you that your taxpayer dollars are going somewhere else other than actually supposedly fixing the issue at the border, which none of that actually fixes the issue at the border? And by the way, Joe Biden's executive action would have fixed what's taking place at the border, so she's just straight out lying here on multiple fronts. It's almost like create the list and take a stab at whatever one you want.
On a different subject, why was the president in that interview using the Gaza Ministry of Health, just run by Hamas, their numbers on the death toll in Gaza? There was a 30,000 figure that he cited on MSNBC. The last time he cited Hamas numbers, officials here dismissed it as a reference to publicly available data. But I would assume that the U.S. has its own assessment of what the death toll is.
We've been very clear here. There are public available data that you all also are taking a look at, that we are citing as well. That's what we're talking about. That's what the president. You could use whatever you want. I'm just saying that, but we have said, we've been really clear. There are publicly available data that showed, sadly, how many deaths that we have seen in Gaza. And the president has been very clear. There's too much. It's tragic. It's tragic what we're seeing. And the president's going to continue to speak to that. Go ahead, Gabe.
It drives me wild that she constantly says, we've been clear. You've been the least clear administration by far that's ever existed in the United States. You haven't been clear whatsoever. You've been lying more than any administration, which is saying a lot because there's been some terrible administrations out there. You continually lie to the American public. You can't answer simple questions, yes or no questions. You dodge it, you spin it, you manipulate it, you gaslight all of us. And quite frankly, Karine, we've had enough of it.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.